Navigating systemic change in healthcare can feel very daunting. It can feel like we're walking through the night in blackness. But there are some stars out there that can help to guide us, and we've heard many of those stories tonight that can help guide us. And I want to share with you one from my own experiences. A little bit about me, as was mentioned, I live on Vancouver Island, and I'm deeply influenced by the Indigenous people that I've encountered there. It's not my territory, but the Kwakwaka'wakw and Kwaguth and Nuu-chah-nulth people and Comox people have deeply shaped who I am. And this picture reminds me of my family as well, who walk alongside me in this journey. But I'm from the prairies, and I don't know if there's any other prairie people here, but I'm deeply influenced by flatland and by elevators and by my Indigenous culture. I'm Dakota and Anishinaabe and Métis, and so I'm very much shaped by that. But I'm also shaped by colonialism. I have many experiences in my own life of experiencing colonialism, but certainly through the legacy of trauma and colonialism, I'm deeply shaped by it. I'm a child of survivors of residential school, and my mother is a survivor of Indian hospitals. But I didn't really understand all of that until I moved to Pine Ridge Reservation about 30 years ago and started to work on social justice issues and treaty violations and things like that. And there was the people there that really informed me about my own history of being colonized. And one of the things that they asked us to get involved in when we were working there for 7 years was the issue of conflict. And so they wanted us to be facilitators, and we were using a process called restorative justice, which is based in ancient cultures and Indigenous ways of dealing with conflict in a holistic way. And for the process that I used, it was the talking circle. And that's what I want to focus on a little bit here tonight. It's a very powerful way of coming together so that everybody can work together to figure out the conflict. Not somebody telling you what to do, but coming together so everybody's voice is heard. But I really had to struggle at one point because I wondered, what are we restoring people back to? If you know anything about Pine Ridge, there's lots of social problems there. The legacy of colonization has created a lot of chaos. And so I really had to struggle with the question of what are we restoring people back to? And it was the elders that helped me to understand when we asked them to translate our guidelines, our circle guidelines into the Lakota language. And they struggled to do that because they had different ways of explaining these guidelines in the Lakota language. But what they all started to talk about with us were things like when they were children and when they would go to community events, and their elders, through protocols and teachings, would remind them that it's important for us to walk with humility, to remember that we're all connected. Not only we as human beings, but also the world around us, the creatures, the waters, everything, we're connected. And so in that space, we also have to remember that we all have varying opinions and experiences. So it's important to respect everybody, to learn from one another, from our different vantage points. And that can be very difficult at times. So it's important to walk with values and principles and ethics, and to walk with integrity, to hold ourselves with integrity, to hold each other with integrity, and especially the stories that we tell in those spaces, because those stories belong to you, the teller of that story. It's also important to be generous, to make sure that we're being kind to one another. And I like the word kind because the root of that word is kin, being a relative to one another. That's kindness. And we all know when somebody comes to us from our family that we love and cherish, we make sure that we give them all that we can. Another piece of that word generosity is gen, the first, how it starts, and it's connected to the concept of generations. And so it reminds me of that old story, that connection of generations and kindness that goes, true kindness is when old men plant trees, knowing that they'll never experience the fruit or the shade of it, but they do it nonetheless for the future generations. And transformation might take generations in terms of our healthcare system. It's going to require courage, and the root of that word is heart in French, coeur. So courage is less an act of bravery and valor, and more of something that comes from that deep place within us, from the seat of our emotions. And certainly in the circle setting, we often hear very difficult stories, people struggling, and we often connect with their stories, and that's empathy. When somebody is sharing the pain that they're going through, we feel it in ourselves. That's empathy. But because we're not going through that experience, we can offer care for that person. And the last thing that the elders told us about was fortitude. And they said it's important to remember to have a strong mind. And fortitude in Latin translates to strength of mind. So critical thinking, coming together to figure things out together, making sure that we pay attention to what we're all saying. But I also think there's more to fortitude than that as well. Because in order to have a strong mind, we have to understand the traumas that we've gone through. We have to learn how to process our traumas. And Einstein reminds us that we can't use the same thinking that got us into the problem to get us out of the problem. To me, that's speaking about healing. So that's what we're trying to restore people back to when we're using processes like the circle process. We want to come back to those values, and all of us have a connection to those values, and it's very important to utilize those values in any transformation that we're striving to do. It reminds me too of, in our journey, of the quote that comes from Lila Watson, an Indigenous woman from Australia, who said, in a speech, she said, if you've come here to help me, you're wasting your time. But if you've come because your liberation is bound up with mine, then let us work together. So that's what we're striving to do. And you know, the best example, in my opinion, of those values is the earth around us, Mother Earth. Mother Earth responds and operates under those rhythms of those values. And that's what we can pick up on as human beings, and that can provide us a way forward, a North Star, if you will, that can provide a way of transforming our healthcare system. Thank you for your kind attention.